Some marriages are designed to end wars, strategic alliances where two people become chess pieces moved for the greater good, sacrificing personal happiness for political stability. For King Theon, who'd ruled for 3 centuries and understood that duty often required personal sacrifice, accepting an arranged marriage to end a 20-year border conflict was just another calculated decision. Princess Adara from the neighboring kingdom would arrive, they'd perform the necessary ceremony, and 2 nations would finally have peace. He'd been through this before, had married for alliance twice in his long reign. Both wives had been pleasant enough. Both had died of age while he remained immortal. Both had been professional partnerships more than romantic connections. He expected this would be similar. A bride doing her duty, a king doing his. 2 people existing side by side, without actually touching each other's hearts. Then Princess Adara arrived at his palace for the wedding ceremony, and in the moment before anyone could tell her she was supposed to look down in deference, she looked directly into his eyes, and everything he'd carefully calculated shattered. Because she didn't see the beast king everyone feared. She saw him, saw Theon, saw loneliness and exhaustion and 300 years of isolation, saw the person underneath the crown. And in her eyes, he saw the same thing reflected back, someone who'd been prepared to sacrifice everything for duty, but hadn't expected to find recognition in the face of her political husband. Adara had been raised to be the perfect princess, 3rd child and only daughter of King Aldrich. She'd grown up knowing her primary value was as alliance material. Her brothers would inherit the throne and govern. She would marry strategically and secure beneficial relationships. It wasn't personal, it was just how royal families functioned. She'd been educated in languages, diplomacy, arts, and all the skills required to be an asset to whatever kingdom she married into. She was intelligent and accomplished, could hold conversations on topics from economics to philosophy. She was also profoundly lonely in ways she'd never been allowed to acknowledge. Being raised as political currency meant never forming genuine attachments. Friendships were vetted for political benefit. Romantic interests were evaluated for strategic value. Every relationship was assessed through the lens of how it served the kingdom. By 25, she'd learned to perform connection without feeling it, could be charming and engaging while maintaining complete emotional distance. It was safer that way. Caring about people who were ultimately expendable in service of duty was pointless. When her father announced she'd be marrying King Theon to end the border war, Adara had accepted with practiced grace. Asked the relevant questions about what would be expected, studied information about Theon's kingdom and rule, prepared herself mentally for becoming wife to an immortal king everyone called the Beast King. The information she gathered suggested he was cold, distant, more interested in governance than personal connection. Perfect, really. They could exist in parallel without emotional complication. She could fulfill her duty without risking her carefully protected heart. The journey to Theon's kingdom took a week. Adara spent it finalizing her mental preparation. She would be respectful and competent, would learn his kingdom's needs and work to support them, would be the perfect political wife her father had raised her to be. She wouldn't expect warmth or connection, wouldn't hope for anything beyond professional partnership. It was just another role to perform. The wedding was scheduled for the day after her arrival, barely time to meet before being legally bound. Both kingdoms wanted the alliance formalized quickly, the peace treaty signed while the ceremony was still fresh. Adara arrived at the palace in late afternoon, was shown to quarters that were beautiful but impersonal, was given 2 hours to prepare for a formal dinner where she'd meet her future husband. Her attendants dressed her in formal gowns that represented both kingdoms, did her hair in elaborate styles that took an hour, applied makeup that made her look flawless and unapproachable. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a perfect princess, empty, performative, exactly what was required. The formal dinner was attended by nobles from both kingdoms, diplomats and advisors who negotiated the alliance, everyone who had political stake in this marriage succeeding. Adara entered the great hall with practiced composure, scanned the room for King Theon, found him standing near the head table. He was tall, imposing, exactly what she'd expected from descriptions. The Beast King in formal regalia, looking powerful and distant and slightly bored by the proceedings. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and something impossible happened. The diplomatic mask she'd worn for 25 years cracked, because he wasn't looking at her like political necessity or strategic asset. He was looking at her like he saw a person, like he recognized something, and in his eyes, she saw the same thing she'd been hiding: loneliness, exhaustion from performing constantly, the weight of duty crushing genuine emotion into small, hidden spaces. He saw her, really saw her, not the perfect princess, but the isolated woman underneath. In that moment, before protocol dictated she should look away, before attendants could rush forward with formal introductions, they stood across a crowded room, recognizing each other's specific damage. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then his advisor was guiding her forward for formal introduction. She was curtsying with perfect form. He was greeting her with diplomatic courtesy. The masks were back in place, but something had shifted, something neither of them had prepared for. The formal dinner was torture. Adara sat beside Theon at the head table, both of them surrounded by hundreds of people, completely unable to actually talk. Every word was public. Every gesture was watched and analyzed. The conversation was performative, designed to demonstrate compatibility for political observers. How was your journey? Comfortable, thank you. Your kingdom is beautiful from what I've seen. You'll have time to explore it properly once we're settled. The words were meaningless, but underneath the diplomatic exchange, Adara was intensely aware of him, the way he held himself with careful control, the way his answers were precisely calibrated to give information without revealing anything personal, the way he looked tired in ways that went beyond physical exhaustion. She wanted to ask real questions. What do you actually want from this marriage? Are you as resigned to professional distance as I am? Did that moment of recognition mean something, or was I imagining connection that doesn't exist? But the setting made genuine conversation impossible, so she performed her role, smiled at appropriate moments, laughed at diplomatic jokes, demonstrated that she would be an acceptable queen, all while acutely aware of the man beside her, who'd seen through her mask for 3 seconds and made her wonder what might be possible if they were alone. The dinner lasted 4 hours. By the end, Adara was exhausted from performing. She excused herself with appropriate courtesy, returned to her quarters, and collapsed on the bed, still wearing the elaborate gown. Tomorrow she'd marry this man, would legally bind herself to him for however long she lived, would become queen of his kingdom and partner in his rule, and she had no idea who he actually was, beyond that 3-second moment of recognition. She didn't sleep that night. Spent hours staring at the ceiling, wondering if she'd imagined the connection, if the loneliness she'd seen in his eyes was real or projection of her own isolation, if the marriage would be the professional partnership she'd prepared for or something more complicated. The wedding ceremony was scheduled for midday. Adara was prepared by attendants who treated her like a doll to be dressed and displayed. The gown was magnificent, layers of silk and lace representing both kingdoms. The jewelry was historically significant, pieces worn by queens for centuries. Her hair was styled perfectly. Her makeup was flawless. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a beautiful stranger. The ceremony took place in the grand hall, witnessed by hundreds. Adara walked down the aisle alone, because her father had remained in their kingdom, the border conflict having created too much animosity for him to attend personally. She approached Theon standing at the altar in formal regalia, looking every inch the immortal king. They'd been instructed on the ceremony beforehand. The vows were traditional, focused on duty and alliance. Nothing personal or romantic, just legal binding of 2 houses for political purpose. Adara spoke her vows with clear voice, maintaining composure. Theon responded with similar control. The officiant declared them married, pronounced them king and queen of the United Territories. The audience applauded appropriately. Then came the part Adara had been dreading, the ceremonial kiss that sealed the marriage. Brief, public, meaningless, except a symbol. Theon stepped closer. His hands were careful when they touched her waist. She tilted her face up, preparing for performative contact. Their eyes met, and for the second time, the mask slipped. She saw exhaustion and resignation and something that might have been hope. He saw fear and determination and desperate loneliness. The kiss was supposed to be brief and chaste, but when their lips met, something shifted. Not passion, not romance, but recognition. Two people acknowledging each other despite the performance they were trapped in. It lasted maybe 3 seconds longer than protocol demanded. When they pulled apart, both were slightly breathless. The audience didn't seem to notice anything unusual, but they knew something had happened, something neither of them had expected. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. More vows, formal presentations, official documentation. Then the reception, with more performing and diplomacy. Adara and Theon sat side by side, playing their roles, both acutely aware that something had shifted during that kiss. The reception finally ended near midnight. Adara was exhausted beyond measure. She was escorted to the royal quarters, which she would now share with Theon. The attendants explained sleeping arrangements, separate bedrooms connected by a sitting room. Appropriate for a political marriage, where privacy and personal space were respected. They could present as united couple publicly, while maintaining independence privately. Adara thanked them and dismissed everyone, stood alone in luxurious quarters that felt like a beautiful cage. The door to Theon's bedroom was closed. She could see light beneath it, indicating he was still awake. She should go to her own room, should start establishing the pattern of professional distance that would define their marriage, should accept that the recognition she'd felt was interesting anomaly, but not basis for actual connection. Instead, she found herself crossing to his door, knocking before courage failed. The light shifted. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Theon stood there in casual clothing, having shed the formal regalia. He looked human, approachable, younger than 3 centuries should allow. "Come in." He stepped aside without question. She entered his private space, the sitting room that connected their bedrooms. It was comfortable rather than formal. Books everywhere, evidence of actual personality rather than just political performance. "I'm sorry to intrude." She wasn't sure what she was doing here. Today was overwhelming." He closed the door, sat in one of the chairs, gestured for her to take the other. Yes, it was. She sat, grateful he wasn't making this awkward. That moment, during the ceremony, when I didn't imagine that, did I? The recognition? No. His voice was quiet. You didn't imagine it. Relief flooded through her. I've been questioning my perception all day, wondering if I invented connection because the alternative of purely political marriage was too depressing. You didn't invent it. He leaned forward slightly. I saw it too. Saw you. Not the perfect princess, but the person underneath, who's exhausted from performing, who's lonely despite being constantly surrounded by people, who's been raised to be political asset rather than actual person. She felt tears threaten. That's exactly what I am, what I've been trained to be. That's what we both are. He said it with understanding. I've spent 3 centuries being the Beast King, making calculated decisions for the good of the kingdom, sacrificing personal desire for duty, watching everyone I care about die while I continue. I forgot what it felt like to be seen as Theon instead of the crown. Then you looked at me, and I remembered. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Adara asked the question that had been haunting her. What do we do with that? We're married now, legally bound, expected to rule together. But we barely know each other. And I don't know if the connection I feel is real or just desperate hope that this won't be completely empty. We figure it out, honestly. He met her eyes. No performing. No political masks. Just two people who've been wrapped in roles, trying to see if actual connection is possible.
That's terrifying. I know, but it's also the only thing that makes this bearable. I can do another political marriage. I've done it before. But Adara, if there's a chance at something real, I'd like to try, even if it's complicated and uncertain. They talked until dawn, not about policy or kingdoms or duty, about themselves, about who they actually were underneath the roles they'd been forced into. Adara told him about growing up as political currency, about learning to be perfect while feeling empty, about watching her brothers form genuine relationships while she was kept carefully isolated for strategic deployment, about resenting her father for raising her as asset rather than daughter. Theon told her about 3 centuries of immortal rule, about the loneliness of outliving everyone, about his 2 previous political marriages that had been pleasant but hollow, about building walls to protect himself from inevitable loss, about forgetting what genuine connection felt like.
They discovered unexpected commonalities. Both loved books, but rarely had time to read for pleasure. Both felt trapped by duty, while also being good at fulfilling it. Both had learned to perform emotion, while keeping actual feelings carefully locked away. Both were desperately lonely, despite never being alone. As the sun rose, painting the sitting room in soft light, Adara felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Not naive optimism, but genuine possibility that maybe this marriage could be more than strategic necessity. "I want to try this," she said it carefully. "Building something real. But I need you to understand something. I don't know how to be genuine. I've spent 25 years performing. I'll probably retreat behind masks without meaning to. Probably disappoint you when I can't be as open as you deserve." He smiled slightly. "I've spent 300 years maintaining emotional distance. I'll probably pull away when connection gets intense. Probably hurt you without meaning to. We're both disasters at vulnerability. Then we're disasters together." She felt lighter than she had in months. "We figure it out as we go. Deal?" "Deal." He extended his hand formally, but when she took it, the gesture transformed. He pulled her close, hugged her properly, and Adara felt herself relax into the embrace. Not romantic, not sexual, just 2 lonely people acknowledging they didn't have to be alone anymore. They spent the first weeks of their marriage learning each other. Publicly, they performed the role of united rulers, attended council meetings together, made joint policy decisions, presented as cohesive leadership. Privately, they were cautiously building genuine connection, had dinner together most evenings where they talked about everything except work, showed each other the books they loved and the things that made them laugh, shared their actual opinions rather than diplomatic responses. Slowly, carefully, they stopped performing for each other. The first major test came 2 months into their marriage. A crisis emerged that required Theon to lead military response personally. He'd be gone for potentially weeks, in danger, completely outside Adara's ability to help or protect. She discovered she cared far more than she'd expected. The thought of him being hurt made her chest tight with fear, but she couldn't say that. Couldn't admit that this political husband had become someone whose safety mattered intensely. So she fell back on diplomatic composure. "Be safe. Return when you can. I'll manage the kingdom in your absence." Theon had looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "That's all you have to say?" "What else would I say?" She'd kept her voice neutral. "You're fulfilling your duty. I'll fulfill mine. We'll reconvene when the crisis is resolved." He'd crossed to her slowly. "Adara, we agreed to be honest, not perform. So I'm asking honestly, are you worried about me? Or is this just professional concern?" She'd felt her mask crack.
Of course I'm worried. You're going into danger. But I don't know how to express that without sounding desperate or inappropriate. We've only been married 2 months. I don't have the right to be as scared as I am. You have every right. His voice was gentle. I'm scared too. Scared of leaving you. Scared of getting hurt. Scared that if something happens to me, you'll be left managing a kingdom you barely know while grieving a husband you just started caring about. I don't want to go, but duty requires it. She'd felt tears threaten. I don't know how to do this, how to care about someone when caring means being vulnerable to loss. You just do it. He'd pulled her close. You let yourself care despite the risk, and you trust that I'll do everything possible to come back. She'd held him tightly. Come back. That's all I'm asking. Promise you'll come back. I promise. He'd kissed her forehead. And Adara.
While I'm gone, stop performing. Let the court see the real you. Stop being perfect and start being genuine. That's what the kingdom actually needs. He'd been gone 3 weeks. Adara had managed the kingdom competently, but not perfectly. She'd made mistakes, asked for advice when she was uncertain, admitted when she didn't know something, stopped performing flawless competence, and started being real. The court had initially been shocked. Then they'd become supportive. Turned out people responded better to genuine humanity than perfect performance. When Theon returned, injured but alive, Adara had abandoned all protocol and run to him in front of the entire court, thrown her arms around him and cried with relief. He'd held her, both of them ignoring the shocked whispers of nobles who'd never seen royal emotional displays. Later, in their private quarters, he'd asked her what changed. You stopped performing. She'd been curled against him, relief still flooding through her. You asked me to be genuine, so I tried. It was terrifying and liberating. People actually like the real me better than the perfect version. Good. He'd kissed her properly. Because the real you is who I'm falling in love with, not the perfect princess, the woman who's learning to be vulnerable despite being scared. The admission had changed everything. They spent the next months actively building a relationship that was both partnership and romance, learning each other intimately while also learning to rule together. It wasn't always smooth. Adara had periods where she retreated behind diplomatic masks because vulnerability felt dangerous. Theon had times where he pulled away because a mortal instinct toward distance kicked in. But they were committed to trying, to being honest when they were struggling, to choosing each other repeatedly, even when it was hard. A year into their marriage, they had their first major fight, about policy, about decision-making authority, about whether Theon's 3 centuries of experience meant his judgment should override hers. The fight was loud and emotional. Both said things they didn't mean. Both retreated to their separate bedrooms, hurt and angry. Adara spent hours convinced this was the end, that they'd return to being political partners who existed side by side without actually connecting, that the genuine relationship they'd built was too fragile to survive conflict. Around midnight, Theon knocked on her door. She opened it ready to continue fighting or accept defeat. Instead, he said 3 words. I was wrong. About what? About everything. About using my experience as justification for dismissing your perspective. About treating this like I know better because I've ruled longer. About forgetting that partnership means actually partnering. I'm sorry. She'd felt her anger deflate. I was wrong too. About letting pride prevent me from hearing valid points. About making this about power when it should have been about finding the best solution together. About forgetting that we're supposed to be on the same side. They'd spent hours talking through the actual issue, found compromise that incorporated both perspectives, learned that fighting didn't mean the relationship was over. It meant they were engaged enough to have strong opinions. The next morning, Theon had called a council meeting, announced formal power-sharing arrangements that gave Adara equal authority in all governance decisions, made it clear she wasn't queen in title only, but genuine co-ruler. The gesture had meant more than he probably realized. By their 2nd anniversary, they'd become genuine partners in every sense, ruled together effectively,
challenged each other's thinking, and made better decisions because of it. Built a relationship that was both professional and deeply personal. And they were happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not performing contentment, but experiencing real joy. The court noticed the transformation. The Beast King, who'd been cold and distant for 3 centuries, had become approachable and engaged. Queen Adara, who'd arrived as a diplomatic trophy, had become beloved leader who was genuine and compassionate. Together, they were changing how the kingdom functioned. More transparency, more accountability, more humanity and governance. 3 years into their marriage, during a quiet evening in their quarters, Adara asked him something that had been on her mind. That first moment, when we looked at each other across the hall before the wedding, did you know then? Know what? That this would become real? That we'd fall in love? That what started as political necessity would become the most important relationship in my life? He'd pulled her close. I hoped. Couldn't know. But I saw something in you that I recognized in myself. And I thought, maybe, possibly, if we were both willing to try, we could build something genuine from a calculated arrangement. You hoped right. She'd kissed him. Best political alliance ever made. Absolutely. He'd smiled. Though technically, the alliance would have worked regardless. The peace treaty was solid regardless of whether we fell in love. This was just extraordinary bonus. She'd laughed. So I'm an extraordinary bonus? You're everything. His voice became serious. You're my partner and best friend, and the person who makes 300 years of loneliness feel like it was worth it to get to this. You're not a bonus. You're the whole point. She'd felt tears of happiness. I love you for seeing me when everyone else saw political asset, for building something real from calculated arrangement, for being willing to try even when we were both terrified. I love you for the same reasons. He'd held her. For looking into my eyes and seeing Theon instead of the Beast King. For taking a chance on connection when performing distance was safer. For choosing vulnerability despite every instinct telling you to protect yourself. They'd sit together in the comfortable quiet of 3 years shared. They arranged marriage that had become love story, living proof that sometimes calculated decisions lead to unexpected joy, that duty can coexist with genuine affection, that looking into someone's eyes and really seeing them can change everything. 5 years into their marriage, 10 years into a peace that held strong, Adara had something important to tell Theon. She was pregnant. Unexpected given his immortality and her mortality, but apparently possible. They'd have a child, an heir, a living representation of the alliance that had become love. Theon's reaction was complex. Joy at the idea of a child, terror at the thought of being a father after 3 centuries, sadness because the child would be mortal and he'd eventually lose them, overwhelming love for Adara and the life they were creating. He'd held her and cried, something she'd never seen in 5 years together. This is terrifying and wonderful, and I don't know how to process it. We process it together. She'd wiped his tears, like we've processed everything else, with honesty and support and choosing each other repeatedly. Their daughter was born healthy and beautiful. They named her Elena, meaning light. She was indeed light in both their lives. Watching Theon with their daughter, seeing this immortal king become gentle father, Adara fell in love with him all over again. 10 years into their marriage, during a family evening in their quarters with 8-year-old Elena reading nearby, Adara reflected on the journey. We were supposed to be political marriage, strategic alliance with professional distance. Look what we became instead. Everything better than we imagined. He'd taken her hand. And it started because you looked into my eyes and saw me, saw past the Beast King to the person underneath. That changed everything. You looked back and saw me too. She'd squeezed his hand. Saw past the perfect princess to the lonely woman who needed connection. We saved each other. We did. They'd sat together, surrounded by the life they'd built from calculated arrangement, living proof that sometimes the best love stories start with strategic necessity and transform into genuine joy through willingness to actually see each other. If this story reminded you that arranged marriages can become love stories when people choose connection over performance, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Drop a comment with the word moon if you believe really seeing someone can change everything. Share this video with someone who needs to know that duty and love can coexist, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is look past the role someone plays to see who they actually are underneath. Thanks for watching, and remember, we're all more than the masks we wear.
And the right person will see past performance to recognize the real person waiting to be known.